Well, now that we've had a chance to actually look at the actual writing model, it's time now that we take a look at the critique of that model. It starts out, we look first at the beginning. This narrative is a very good beginning because the statement, "It all started when he hit me back," defies logic and it brings a smile to the reader's face. It's pretty humorous. It also tweaks one's attention and makes the reader ask the question, what? What all started when he was hit back? The reader wants to know. They look and they go, well, what was it? Coherence, we've talked about that a lot. Coherence, we know, is the order in which things are presented. In this case, the writer uses chronological coherence and narrates the story from beginning to end, from sitting peacefully on the swings until the narrator and Johnny find themselves standing in the principal's office, and finally even a few days after that when the victim reflects on the lessons he has learned from the incident. We move ahead also here in looking at the writing model, and the writer has done a good job of presenting a lot of details. There are many details that make the writing come alive, including but not limited to the following. 10 minutes into recess. Not just a few minutes, but 10 minutes into it. There were 3 swings. He didn't just say there were swings, he said there were 3 swings. A handful of small pebbles. He doesn't just say that he doesn't say rather that the narrator was sitting on the swing, but he tells how he was sitting there, what he was doing, in a handful of small pebbles, and he wasn't just tossing them, he was tossing them at a small brown twig. Then his large dark shadow on the ground. He talks about not only the shadow, not just a shadow, but it's a large shadow, and it's a dark shadow. Very ominous. And then he tells us what Johnny was wearing, a bright red shirt, so he can see the colors. Then his head tilted toward his left shoulder. He didn't just say Johnny talked, but he had the bright red shirt, his head was tilted, and not only was his head tilted, but toward his left shoulder. And then when Johnny takes his chin, he puts his index finger under the narrator's chin. Doesn't just say lifted my chin, but he put his index finger under my chin. And we can all kind of feel that pressure, that fingernail digging into the soft skin under our chin by our neck. And then my chin pressed into the gravel and dirt. We can all kind of feel that groveling. We're pressed down and got our chin in the gravel. It's scratching the dirt. And then my right arm bent behind my back. Not just my arm, but the narrator's right arm. And then staring down at the gray carpet. Not just staring down at the floor, but at the gray carpet. So the narrator does a good job of presenting details, and that makes the writing very vivid, again, as though we're right there. And then the pace. Pace is very important. That's the way the story moves. And this narrative moves along quickly from the very tranquil setting of the narrator and his friend Tim sitting quietly on the swings, to the appearance of Johnny and his 3 friends and the bullying, to the scuffle, to the principal's office, and then finally to the narrator's reflection on the incident a few days later. There are no sidebars or delays in the storytelling and moves at a good pace from beginning to end. The writer doesn't go off on tangents or anything like that, but keeps it moving, and that's good. And another facet of this story, another quality of this narrative story that we should talk about here is dialogue. Dialogue is when people are speaking, and it's used effectively several times during the narration of this short story. These are some of the things. When Johnny says, "Hey, small stuff, are you and your little friend having fun on the baby playground swings?" Then a little bit later he says, "You're a skinny little punk and I don't like you." And then later he says, "What's the matter? You scared or something?" And then finally, as he is pinned down to the ground, Johnny says to the narrator, "Have you had enough or do you want more?" So the writer's use of dialogue makes the story come alive. It also gives the reader the feeling that she or he is actually right there observing the event. It has an immediacy. It's like it's going on right now. We're there watching, we're there listening. And that makes for vivid and good, effective writing. And the last item we should look at here in our writing critique would be the conclusion. The narrative has a good conclusion, as near the end, the writer repeats the opening quote. Johnny's words, "It all started when he hit me back." to tie the conclusion in with the beginning of the story, the beginning of the narrative. This makes for very effective continuity. Brings us back to the beginning, ties everything together, and then finally, the writer concludes in the final paragraph by drawing several conclusions regarding lessons learned by the narrator. So this is a very good writing model, and as we look at it, it shows us, we take a look at the critique, we can see all of these qualities that make it effective writing. Now that we've reviewed the writing model critique, let's move ahead to the self-assessment. Go ahead now and click on the link in Course Sites for the video titled Self-Assessment.